All right, now this second section, admittedly, is a little bit more involved. First one was kind of nuts and bolts. This one is a little bit more involved and requires probably a little bit more concentration than the first part. But we're going to dive right in. 5 of the 10 rules of thumb we've covered. 5 to go. How else can Lauren make money by doing nothing? Well, we talked about the 401k before. That isn't necessarily doing nothing, but you put money away and your company matches it. We're also going to talk about interest rates. So I know that you've probably gone over percentages at some point in your math education, maybe even interest rates. Now we're going to talk about how it's really practical for you on a day-to-day basis. And we'll use Lauren as an example. The interest rate is the percentage of money that you get paid. So example, some of you might have a savings account now with the bank, and you probably see your money sitting in a savings account and you earn a few pennies usually on that money because you don't get a very high interest rate. Lauren gets 1% from her bank. She put $1,000 away. So at the end of the year, she's earned $10. All right, that's $10 when she didn't really do anything. She just let her money sit in there. What gets powerful though is what's called compound interest. This is interest that you earn on the interest you've already earned, which really starts to grow. So you earn interest on your interest. After 1 year, Lauren had $1,010. After 15 years, it's now $1,160. She made this money just by letting her money sit in an account. So the orange is the interest, the gray is that $1,000 principal, and the money grows and grows and grows. Albert Einstein actually once said that compound interest is one of the greatest forces known to mankind. So I'm not sure Albert did a seminar like this or not, but he was certainly bright enough to understand the impact of compound interest on his own personal finances. Next rule of thumb, compound interest is one of the most powerful tools you can use to make your money grow. The fantastic, wonderful news is most of you guys are 15, 16, 17 years old. Compound interest is really important when you have many years ahead. For Mr. Curtis and I, there's less years in front of us to let our money keep growing and growing and growing until we want to use it in our retirement accounts. But for you all, there's a runway of 40, 50, 60 years that you can let your compound interest just grow and grow and grow. By the way, the bank is giving Lauren 1% on her money. Can anybody tell me why a bank even gives us money for us to put money in their account? Yeah? Great, thank you. So they just said you give your money out as loans, right? They take the money and they turn it around and they loan other people money, right? Exactly. So they pay Lauren 1%, they turn around and loan that same $1,000 to me at 8%, they pocket the 7% profit. I'm not anti-bank, but make no mistake, they are in it to make a profit. They give us a little bit, they take that little bit and they loan it to somebody else at a much higher rate. That's how they make their money. That's how banks make their billions of dollars. Interest rates are great. Lauren just made $160 on her $1,000. But there's the flip side of interest rates. When we borrow money, we have to pay back the lender plus interest. I just gave a real quick example where with that $1,000 I borrowed it, and now I have to pay it back with interest. But let's be smart about how we do that. Most everybody, if not everybody here, will borrow money at some point in their life. I told you I'm a realist when it comes to this stuff, okay? Myself, guessing Mr. Curtis, Ms. Mills, we borrowed money at some point. Some of you may have already. That is life. That is what we do. It can be a car, it can be a house, it can be for student loans. It can be to pay off medical bills. Something will happen that will borrow money, but how you do it is a huge difference. So in this case, let's look at Lauren. Lauren got a new job. She's like, great. I want to take $5,000, and you can argue whether this is needs or wants, but she wants to furnish her apartment. So she goes to the bank, she gets a $5,000 loan, she agrees to pay 7% interest, even though the bank only gives her 1%. And she said, I'll pay it back in 5 years, and she agrees to it. She is paying back, after 5 years, she will have paid over $6,100. Make no mistake that when you take out a loan, that's not the money that you're paying back. You're paying that money plus. In this case, $6,100. So that apartment better look pretty sweet by the time she's done with it, because it's not $5,000 it's going to cost her. It's going to cost her over $6,100. Interest on savings are great. Interest on borrowing, not so great, but it's part of life, and we're all going to do it. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about credit cards. I don't have to tell you what a credit card is. My guess is you've seen it at some point. Good versus evil. There are some people out there that will tell you to never get a credit card because you'll get buried, it'll ruin your life, you'll get phone calls all the time demanding payment, etc. I'm not one of those people, okay? I think credit cards are an important part of life. And odds are, if there's 40 people in here, maybe all 40 of us are going to have credit cards, okay? So, the basics first. A debit card is just like moving money between accounts. It's like writing a check. Credit cards, you're borrowing money. Remember, every time you use Apple Pay, you swipe your credit card, you're using Square, you're going to Starbucks, you're getting a coffee, whatever it is, every time you do that, you are taking out a loan. You are taking out a loan and you are borrowing money. And we're going to show you today on credit cards how much that actual cup of coffee can actually cost you if you're not real careful. Credit cards can be necessary at times. Again, I think credit cards are part of the life that we live in today. Sometimes you don't have a debit card, sometimes you don't have cash. And you're like, thank goodness I have this Visa card and I use it. Life happens. Sometimes there's an emergency payment. You have a relative that had a hospital bill and you want to help them out because they can't do it on their own. Sometimes that happens. I get it. Sometimes a credit card is nice to have in those situations. Unlike when I was 17, sometimes it's the only form of payment a place will take. I've gone into places that tried to give them cash. They're like, no, we don't take cash, but here's the Square, and you just slide it, and you just add a tip, etc. Okay, they don't take cash. Sometimes you need a credit card. Here's a little cartoon. It's hard to read the back, so I'll read it. It says, the bad news is we'll have to take possession of your baby for non-payment of debt. The good news is we've already pre-approved him for a credit card. Obviously tongue-in-cheek, but if you haven't already started receiving credit card offers in the mail, you will soon. And sometimes they make it so easy by saying, sign up for a credit card, and here's all the wonderful things you can do with it. I'm suggesting you be careful. I'm not suggesting you don't get a credit card. I'm suggesting you just be very careful with all the offers that you're soon going to have hitting your mailbox or that you're already getting today. Why are you getting offers like that? Because credit card companies make billions and billions of dollars off of you and off of them. It's easy access to money, and it's the #1 reason people struggle financially, because they overextend on credit cards. It's way too easy to walk into a furniture store and give out a piece of plastic and buy a new couch than it is to take $400 out of your pocket and give them cash. It's way too easy with a credit card. This is where they run into problems, but we're going to see in a minute is where these problems really get compounded. And you're going to be educated not to make the same mistake. Most credit cards carry huge interest rates, 20% or above. They're making tons of money. It starts with their interest rate, huge interest rate. Here's a concept we're gonna take 5 minutes to talk about. About 15 or 20 years ago, someone brilliant in the credit card industry said, let's start charging a minimum payment due. This minimum payment due has probably been the #1 reason in the credit card area why people are struggling. And it's because of the language that the credit card companies use that most people don't understand that really gets them in trouble. And it's not because they're not intelligent people, it's because the credit card companies are specifically using language that make it difficult for you and me to understand what we should be paying. Let's look at real life examples. These are real credit card statements. In fact, between the first session and the second session, I just got an email on what I was owed, and I wasn't gonna take time to try to pop it up because it's just as misleading as all these other ones. I am not anti-credit card. Okay, I just mentioned a minute ago, I think they're important in our life. I am against how they tell you and me we should be paying our bills and what we should be paying. This is to make sure that you don't fall into that pitfall and that trap. A little hard to read. This is a Visa card. Your statement is ready. Yahoo! I get to pay money. That's okay. I spent the money on my credit card. $3,200 is my balance. Minimum payment due $40. Payment due date May 24th. I'm looking at that and I'm like, all right, I gotta pay $40. That's not gonna kill me this month. That's okay. $3,200 is what I owe. I'm gonna write them a check for $40 because that's what they told me is the minimum amount I pay, and that's what I want to pay. I want to pay the minimum. So where people get really kind of fooled and destroyed is the difference. Does anyone have a calculator on their phone? Somebody tell me the difference between $3,204 and $40. He's knocking it out. So $3,164 is going to start getting charged 20% interest that I have to pay because this credit card company told me I only had to pay $40. That's going to drive me into the financial cell. That's what they're not telling us. Let's look at the next example. American Express. Very reputable company. You may have heard about them. Same with Visa, same with MasterCard. They're all large businesses. They're all reputable companies. Statement balance, $12.56. Recent purchase, about $18. Total balance, $12.74. Payment due, $474. What's somebody gonna pay if they get this financial statement sent to them? Exactly. They're gonna pay $474 because that's what it says to pay. Here's my calculator, buddy, right here. What's the difference? $12.74 and $4.74. And I'll pay. $800. $800. They're gonna start charging me 20% interest on every single month because I paid what I thought I should pay here with payment due. This is the way they make billions and billions of dollars. By people paying this number and not this number. Look at my third and final example here. This is the one that really kills me. And I am kind of passionate about this because a lot of America is falling into financial issues here because they're reading the language that these credit card statements are saying to them. And they just didn't go through a session like this, or they didn't have parents in their 20s that told them the kind of how to handle these things. And it's at no fault of their own. And now all of a sudden they owe all this money to credit card companies and they can never get ahead of it. It's a real problem. Last example, it's a little hard to see. MasterCard. We've probably all heard of MasterCard. Some of us may have a MasterCard. Some of us have family that has a MasterCard. I have a MasterCard. $12.45 is my statement balance. Minimum payment due, $29. You know what? I'm gonna pay $29 this month because that's the minimum payment due. Well, we just had a discussion that MasterCard's now gonna charge me huge interest on the difference. But look at this. Look what they put down here, right on the statement. On the one hand, you'd be like, good, they're a little bit more open than the other ones, because they say, if you only pay the minimum payment, it's gonna take you 5 years to pay this off, and you'll have spent $1,858, even though you only owe $1,245. That's a lot. That's on top of my next month's statement that I'm gonna owe money for. Then they say, but you know what? If you paid $44, which is just 15 more than the 29, good news. It's only gonna take you 3 years to pay it off. It's gonna cost you $1,584, and you saved $274. Saved $274. I spent $1,584 and I only owe $1,245. The way that they're using the English language and the math so they can make billions of dollars in profits by not being clear in their explanation is shameful to me. And I don't want to see anybody in this room fall into that trap, just like we might have relatives that did. I think I mentioned earlier to this group, my cousin and his wife, they were both spenders. The wife ended up filing bankruptcy because they divorced, and then she filed bankruptcy. This was her problem. She just kept paying the minimum. Or she was fooled into thinking, well, you know what? I can save money if I put in 44 instead of 29. That's really bad that they do that, and they shouldn't do that. And when you get credit card statements in the mail, or you get them online, I hope that you're gonna see the difference moving forward. Let's move forward. Had Lauren used her credit card for that $5,000 loan so she can deck out her apartment? It has a 21% interest rate, which is pretty average these days for credit cards. It would have cost her over $8,200. $8,200 when she thought she was taking out a $5,000 loan. That's a huge difference. But wait, there's more. Because if she paid just the minimum monthly due, which for her is $150 a month, it would have taken her over 19 years to pay that $5,000 debt. She's not staying in that apartment for 19 years, right? She'll probably be in her 4th place by then, and that furniture probably ended up on the street somewhere by then. But you know what? She's still paying it off for 19 years, and that $5,000 debt became $11,500 because she read her credit card statement and she read what the minimum due amount was. This is how people are getting buried in debt today. This is what should be taught in every single one of our schools for your grade level, if not those 7-year-olds we saw earlier, maybe tone down a little bit, to make sure that everybody understands exactly how to read their credit card statement. Rule of thumb, credit cards. Pay off your full balance, and if you can't, pay as much as you can. But never, never just make the minimum monthly due payment that they're telling you to pay. If my knees weren't so creaky, I'd get down on my knee, I'd say, please don't pay that minimum monthly due, because you're gonna get buried in credit card debt, and you're gonna struggle, and it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna be a problem for you and your partner and your family and moving forward, and you might not be able to save for retirement, and it just impacts your life. You're gonna get calls from the credit card company, where's our money? You're not gonna wanna pick up the phone. I know I'm kind of dramatizing this a little bit, but this is real life stuff. Okay. Let's move on. So instead of paying something back in 19 years, what can Lauren do to pay as little as possible for her loan? Often, the interest rate that we're talking about is tied to something called a credit report or a credit score. Quick show of hands. Who's ever heard of a credit report before? Okay, great, smattering of you, fantastic. My guess is that most of the adults that you may live with are not aware of credit reports or credit scores. They're certainly not aware of theirs. Okay? I just need a quick volunteer. You don't even have to get out of your seat. Can I get a volunteer? One volunteer. Thank you so much. What's your name? James? James, thanks so much. So James, I run into you on Broadway, okay? We meet each other. We don't really know each other too well. I just remember you from this class. I'm like, oh yeah, James, I remember him. I say, hey James, can I borrow $100? I really need $100. What do you want to know about me before you take out a Ben Franklin and put it in my hand? You want to know if I'm going to pay it off, if I'm going to pay it back. Excellent. Anything else you want to know about? What am I going to use it for? Excellent. Am I going to Vegas? Or am I using this to pay off a student loan because I'm trying to further myself in my career? Two excellent answers. Thank you, James. That's wonderful. Otherwise, what else do you want to know about me before you give me $100? Yes?
What's your history of paying it off?
What's my history with paying it off? The last guy I borrowed $100 from, did I stiff him or did he get his money back? Thank you. Did someone have one here? How much I'm earning? Fantastic. Do I have the capacity to pay it off? Is James the 20th person I went to today to say, can I borrow $100 from you? Or is he the only one? I may owe 19 other people $100 and he may be at the bottom of that list by the time I'm trying to pay people back. All really good answers, thank you. This is exactly what the banks, the car lease companies, the landlords, when you get a mortgage for a home, this is what they want to know about each of us. And this is what's being reported about us either today or will be shortly. Let's go. Take a look. Credit reports. We just covered some of these things. Great job, everybody. Credit reports include the following: personal information. Where do I live? What's my age? Yes, how much money do I earn? Credit account history. How well have I paid off people that I've borrowed from in the past? Credit inquiries. How often has someone requested to see a credit file? I may go to James and say, I want to borrow $100. He might say, well, let's look at Don's credit file. Why have 10 other people also requested to see Don's credit file this month? What is he doing? What's going on? My antenna's up about that. And public records. Lawsuits, tax liens, you file for bankruptcy, it's all on your credit report. The days of somebody sitting at a desk and reading through a report and looking at pages and pages and saying, should I loan that money to Don? He wants a car. I'm not sure. Let me read through these 6 pages. That's pretty much gone. Some very small companies still have what's called a credit manager to do that. Most companies rely on something called a FICO score, created by a company called Fair Isaacs out in Minnesota. It takes all this information, and this is the world we live in, and it gives us each one score. My guess is some of you already have a score on you today, and you're not even aware of it. My guess is some of you already have a credit report, and you're not even aware of it. If you have a job, if you've leased a car, if you're paying rent, if you've ever needed to take out a loan, you've probably got a credit report. It's a little bit of the social media of finance. People are reporting on us. They're saying things about us. For sure, the adults that you live with today have a credit report on them. They probably have never seen it. So this FICO score, which takes all of that data and kind of merges it into a single number, like everything else in life, there's a scale. 300 to 850. 670 is considered a good score. That's what you should be striving for. That's our next rule of thumb. You want to go for a score of 670 or better. I mentioned this in the last group. It's harder for young people your age to get a good score right off the bat because these scores are based on how well you pay your bills over time. Well, unless you took a car loan out when you were 7 years old, you probably don't have a big credit history, okay? But you are 15, 16, 17, 18 today. So your credit history is starting. This is the time to pay attention to that. So great, so Lauren now knows that there's a credit report on her and a credit score on her. So she takes action. First, she goes to this website, annualcreditreport.com. About 10 or 15 years ago, the government recognized how important credit scores and credit reports are, and they forced the credit agencies to put our credit reports online for free. Every year we can go there and get a free copy of that report. When you go home tonight, ask any of the adults that you live with to log on and get a copy of their report. They might be so kind as to show it to you, they might not. Either way, you might actually be teaching them a little bit about credit history. Next, Lauren's going to work to pay her bills on time because she sees her score and she wants to improve it. And she's not going to apply for that extra credit card. She wants to focus on the one she has to make sure that she pays it off in full every single month. Lauren had a tax lien on her credit report where the government said, hey, you didn't pay your taxes. And it was wrong. There's tons of stuff on these credit reports that are erroneous. Nobody is looking to protect you and make sure that the information's right, except you and me on mine. So you need to go and you need to look at that report at least once a year and make sure that the information being reported about you is correct. And if it's not, they give you a little form and you say, this is wrong, go check it out. They make it very easy for you. We're going to get into a bit of a concept on risk versus reward. It's our last kind of concept that we're going to go over today. We do risk versus reward every day. We drive, for those of us that drive, risk versus reward. We do it every single day. We take an airplane, we do whatever. We, tiny bit of risk, big reward because we're getting to where we want to get to. The other day, there was a slice of pizza that was left out all night. I was dying for that slice of pizza. I ate it. Little bit of risk. If that pizza went bad overnight, I would have paid a heavy price. My reward was, I was really in the mood for that slice, and I had it. So we have risk versus reward all the time in our lives. Okay? And that's what companies use to determine interest rates and charging. If you have a poor score, remember 670 or more is what you're striving for. If you have a score of 480, which is a poor score, guess what? When you go to lease that car, they're going to say, Don's a bit of a high risk. His scores are 450 or 500. It's a bit of a risk. To make it worth my while, I'm going to have to charge him $350 a month because I'm taking a risk by giving Don that money. And you know what? He may not pay. By the way, if my score is 450, they might just say, no way, we're not even going to work with you. Okay? Or they might say, you know what? I'll give you the money to lease that car, but you better make it worth my while. I'm going to have to charge you $350 a month. On the other hand, if I have a good credit score, call it 750, that same company might say, geez, Don's paying his bills on time. He's done it over a long time. You know, I have a good credit history on him. It's clear. He doesn't cheat any of his creditors. He has no tax liens. I'm not taking much of a risk with Don. I want him as a customer. I'm only going to charge him $200. Just $200. This is where it affects our life. Okay? Poor credit score, I'm paying $350. Good credit score, I'm paying $200. This is what's happening. This is why you need to be aware of what your score is and what your credit report says. Right now, my 24-year-old just applied for an apartment. They pulled their credit report. They pulled their credit score. They were gonna evaluate whether they can get the apartment or not based on that score. It's happening all the time. We just need to be aware of it. Lower interest rates, the difference between when I have to pay $350 and $200 because my interest rate is lower, leaves more money in my pocket for my needs, my wants, my savings. Okay, same risk versus reward. How can Lauren make her money grow faster? Risk. When you have risk with money, your money can go up or down, it can even go to $0. The higher the risk, the higher the reward. Remember Lauren put some money in her savings account, $1,000? She earned this much in interest because there was no risk. Savings accounts generally have no risk involved. Lower risk, lower reward. However, Lauren looked at stocks and bonds. You probably have heard these terms at one point or another in your life. So with stocks, you can buy and sell shares of a company. You become a little bit of a part owner. You know, if you love Apple products and you're devoted to the iPhones and you think they're doing great, you can become a part owner of Apple and buy a small share in their company. Generally speaking, if Apple does well, your money will grow. If Apple doesn't do well, your money goes down. Okay? A mutual fund is little bits of ownership in many different companies. So you might get a technology and communications mutual fund that buys a little bit in Apple, a little bit in Nokia, a little bit in Samsung, a little bit in Google, a little bit in Microsoft. Okay, so if one of those companies goes, if there's a country that tells Apple, we're not gonna let you sell your product in our country anymore, and they struggle, you know what, that's only one of 10 stocks that you're owning a little piece of. Mutual funds spread the risk around a little bit. Okay? The converse of that is the bond market. Most people struggle with the concept of the bond market. It's actually not too difficult. The bond market is where we actually loan the money out. So they've been fixing Broadway up right out here for years now. Okay? So what happens is the city of Tucson does what's called a bond offering. So they'll say, hey, you know what? Don, give us, the city of Tucson, $1,000 so I can help pay for the construction of this road. And I'll give you 4% on your money in 5 years. I'll give you 4% to borrow your money. I almost become the banker to the city. Okay? Bonds are usually very safe, especially with governments, because all they have to do to pay their debt is raise the taxes. Okay, so bond is the other side. Stocks are more risky because I don't know if that money's gonna go up or down. It can go down to zero. I gotta be prepared for that. Bonds, I know upfront how much I'm gonna get paid back, so there's less risk involved. So great, Lauren has this information now. She's like, all right, I get it. Stocks, bonds, risk, I get it. So now what? What do I do? I think I mentioned this in the last, it's a little bit like my first kid in the hospital. You know, you get handed something, you know, you leave the hospital and it's kind of like, well, where's the playbook, right? What am I doing next? I've never been a parent before. So Lauren has all these decisions to make, and when it comes to stocks and bonds, she's like, great, do I put it all in stocks? Do I put none of it in stocks? Do I just keep it in savings? Here's the final of the 10 rules of thumb that we're gonna go over today. There's more risk in buying stocks than bonds, we just talked about that, but higher risk, higher reward. Historically, stocks return about 10% a year. If I invest $1,000 today, on average in a year, my money will grow 10% or up to $1,100. It'll grow $100. Bonds are about half of that. Lower risk, you know, that government's still gonna be there, lower reward. Final rule of thumb, 100 minus your age in stocks and the remainder in bonds. Lauren is 23. 100 minus 23 is 77. She's gonna invest about 77% of her money in the stock market, 23% in bonds. This is a good rule of thumb, because when Lauren turns my age, and she's 56, 100 minus 56 is 44. So at this point in her life, she'll probably invest about 44, 45% of her money in stocks, 55% in bonds. Because as you get older, you're gonna need that money and you wanna take less risk. You don't have all these years in front of you where stocks can go up and down, because they do, they go like this. But over time, they get higher, 10% a year on average. This is your long-term money too, gang. If you're saving to buy a car in 6 months, it's not going in the stock market. You can lose it, or you can lose a lot of it in 6 months. This is those dollars that you're earmarking for 10, 20, 30, 40 years out. Which I know is a difficult concept to think of today, but it's important to start as soon as possible. Okay, remember when Lauren went to the bank and she got that $1,000, it became $1,160? Well, if Lauren just used this rule of thumb and diversified and bought some stocks and bonds, that $1,000 would have been $2,400 in 15 years. It's a huge difference. She would have more than doubled it, rather than putting it in this little savings account vehicle. There's risk in owning stocks and bonds, but over the long haul, that extra risk pays you off nicely. Long-term dollars, not short-term we're talking about. Last chart. This looks at dollars over the last 100 years or so. So this is 1927. This blue line is the stock market. If you put $100 in 1927, it's a long time ago, but just put $100 in and not another penny, and just let it ride. If you put it in the stock market, it would be worth about $500,000 today. $100 would have became $500,000. If you put it all in the bond market, lower risk, lower reward, that's this bottom line, that $100 would have become almost $10,000. Not bad, not $500,000. If you put your money in a diversified setup between stocks and bonds, that's this middle one, your your $100 would have become about $100,000. This is not only is diversification important here, but the principle about compound interest and letting your money grow over year over year over year plays a huge role in this chart. Okay, quick review. We learned about how to understand paychecks, elements of spending and saving, interest rates. You've probably had it in math class. Now you can see how it applies to your everyday living. Compound interest. So a couple examples of that. You're young. This is the time to really think about that and make it work for you. It's much harder for myself or Mr. Curtis to make compound interest work for us. The basics of credit cards and how to avoid the pitfalls. I was almost on my knees begging you not to pay just the minimum monthly due. Remember those statements that you saw today. You'll get them, and you'll read it, and you'll be like, what the heck is this? I know what they're trying to pull on. Credit reports and credit scores, why they're so important. Bring it up at home. You know, if you're part of the 79% whose parents aren't really talking to you about financial stuff, bring it up. It shouldn't be a taboo subject. The concept of risk versus reward and what are stocks and bonds. 10 rules of thumb. We're going to reiterate it now. Rule of spend and save. Would you mind reading the first one for him?
50% of pay need, 50% of pay for needs, 30% for wants, and 20% for saving.
Excellent. 50, 30, 20. Rule of housing and food. Would you mind? Can't see it. Can you read it?
No more than 30% of paid for housing and 15% for food.
Great. Thank you. Rule of long-term savings. Would you mind? Long-term savings.
at least 10% is paid for long-term savings and retirement.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, automatic deductions, would you mind? Mhm. Exactly, even for small, I don't care if it's $5, even for small amounts. Okay, 401k company matching, would you mind doing that one?
Contribute at least as much to get the full company match.
Yep, and we went over a real life example on that one, great. Rule of compound interest, in the purple, can you read that? It's too far, I know. Let's go a little closer, maybe right here? Compound interest?
Tool to maximize savings, don't wait.
Excellent, thank you so much. Rule of credit cards, would you mind?
Always pay off the full balance if ever just
Exactly. Rule of credit scores, do you mind, James?
Strive for at least a good credit score of 670 or better.
Yes. It's harder when you're young, or just jump out and get a really good score right off the bat, but this is the time you should be working towards that. I'll read the next one or two because it's hard to read. Rule of credit reports. Go to annualcreditreport.com every year and get a free copy of your credit report. Check it out. Ask your family members to check it out. My guess is they've never done it before. The last one, rule of diversification. Invest long-term savings, so 100 minus your age goes into stocks. I've included my email here, okay? So we'll have a brief Q&A session here. If for some reason you're uncomfortable in asking a question, that's cool, you can just post it to me. At the same time, 2, 3, 4, 10 years down the road, I wouldn't wait too much longer than that, at least on my case. If you have a question, feel free to email me. I'd be happy to answer. Okay, Mr. Curtis is now handing these around. I told you I'm a realist. Some of you are gonna take these principles and throw it in the bottom of your backpack. Some of you are gonna take a picture of it so you have it. I doubt anyone's gonna laminate it and take it in the shower each day so they can memorize it. My hope is that some of these things will resonate, and if you did these 10 things, not only would you be better off financially, but you'll be better off emotionally, because you'll be happier in life. Okay, with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions that you might have. Yes, James.
You were talking about a tax lien, but what is that?
Okay, James asked about a tax lien, and what exactly is a tax lien that can go on your credit report. So a tax lien is basically, you don't pay your taxes. So when you have to file your income taxes, if you skip a year or don't pay, the government will put a lien on you and say, you owe us those taxes, and if you don't pay, we're gonna do something like take your house away from you. So when that goes on your credit report, the credit agency is gonna say, wait a second, this person didn't even pay their taxes, that drives your credit score down. Great question. Other questions? Any other questions? Yes, question here. What's that? How do you get into the stock market was the question, which is a great question also. Especially at this stage, if you have any money to invest, I suggest that you register with one of the large brokerage houses. I'll give you the name of two that are biggest in the country. One is called Fidelity, and another one is called Vanguard. All you have to do is you go online and you fill out a form where you call them up. They have excellent customer service, and you say, I want to get started by investing in the stock market, and they'll take down your information, and they'll say, how much do you want to start invest? You give them an amount, and then they'll say, what do you want to invest in? And you pick whatever you want to invest in. It's really, really simple. Thank you for the question. Any others? Any other questions?
I got one.
Yes,
So,
Mr. Curtis.
for the young man that just asked the question, should he invest in an individual stock, or should he buy into a mutual fund that automatically diverses into multiple stocks? What do you think?
That's a really good question. So when you're investing, I'll tell you right now, for me, I like investing in mutual funds, which I described, because it's less risk. So I'd rather invest in something that has 10, 20, 30 companies tied to it. Guys, if you just let me finish this one, thanks. I'd rather have a mutual fund where I can invest in 10, 20, 30 companies in it than invest in one company and hope that that company does well. I'd rather spread my risk around, which is important. The other thing I want to bring up is a point that Mr. Curtis brought up in his last session, which is, hey Don, how about these get-rich-quick schemes to kind of make money? They're out there, right? And you know what? We can all go to Vegas and hope that it lands on 32 red, right? I totally get that. Or we can play the lottery and hope that we pick the right 6 numbers. And you know what? There are people that happens with. It doesn't happen to many. But if you end up working as a nurse, as a doctor, in retail, an artist, in publishing, it doesn't matter, and you follow these 10 rules, I would suggest that you can build the kind of wealth that you and your family would be happy with over the course of your life. That's why these 10 things are important. Any other questions? Yes?
What would you do if you do happen to get in debt? Like, how do you-
If I do what?
What do you do if you do get in debt? How do you get out of it?
It's a really good question. So the question was, what happens when you do get in debt? How do you get out of it? It's not easy, and I'm not here telling you it is easy, but it is possible. So generally speaking, when you're in debt, it's usually the credit card debt that is the problem. You want to pay as much money towards those credit cards as you can every month. If you can't pay the full statement balance, pay whatever you can. And be very careful that whatever you pay with credit card moving forward, you know you can pay by the end of the month. Okay? There's a lot of help companies out there that will help you fix and repair your credit. Some are legit, some are totally bogus, and you have to do your research on it. So be careful before anybody signs up for one of those. But getting into debt, which is very common in the United States, you can attack it, but you have to be smart about how you do it. Pay off your credit cards as quickly as you can. Thank you for the question.
You might wanna see which one has the highest interest rate and target that one first.
If
I've
you
heard
have
two
more
different
than one
thoughts.
credit card.
I've heard 2 different thoughts. One would be find the smallest balance you can knock out first. Another approach is which one of all these debts has the highest interest rate and attack that one first. I've heard 2 different theories. Which one do you think is better?
You know what? I think either of them work fine. There's a level of peace of mind when you can say, you know what? I have 4 credit cards. Let me pay this one off and cut it up and never deal with it again. But you know what? You'd save the most money by paying off the one with the highest interest rate first. So if you have the capacity to kind of do that, that's the one I will probably opt for. Another great question. Okay, so we're gonna do the Kahoot, but I just wanna mention one other quick thing. After this, Mr. Curtis is gonna post a survey link. So I'm asking people to fill a survey out. It's gonna help me. It helps me get better. This is maybe my 15th time or so of doing this. Again, I haven't really done it in person. Please take, on average, it takes about 3 minutes. We're gonna do it here. Fill it out. I have a thick skin, so if you have any constructive feedback, I'm happy to take it. I've seen a few times now, though, people put down uncomfortable seats. I have nothing to do with the chairs that you're sitting on. So I get it that they're uncomfortable, but any other feedback would really be appreciated. Okay. 7 seconds. All right. Good job, everyone. Next up. I'm praying on this one. Majority answered correctly. Yay. Awesome. That's right. Don't pay the minimum balance.
See who was paying attention to this.
3-year higher, exactly. Good questions. Top of this group, good job. Stocks have a higher risk than bonds. Awesome. Good job.
Last one, true or false?
Awesome, that's great. I'm really glad to see you.